Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, we learn more about the upcoming changes to EVA and the personal interaction system, having our burning questions answered. Plus, Inside Star Citizen this week takes a deep look at the distribution centers. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was all about the upcoming distribution centers for Alpha 323. Now, these are huge planet-side locations, buildings essentially, set to offer a whole host of various missions, from hauling, maintenance, FPS, theft, and even bombing runs. Each distribution center is different, and what they offer or provide in terms of services varies based on the company who owns them or operates them, and they want these locations to be hives of activity with multiple players coming and going at any given time. Now, for Alpha 323, there will be multiple distribution centers spread throughout the Stanton system, each one owned by a different brand or an organization in the verse. Some of them will be friendly towards you, others hostile, and each location will provide 4 landing pads and 2 hangars, plus 4 cargo freight elevators in total, and each wing will provide other areas for missions like maintenance, for example. Now, inside there will be a lobby with rooms off of this lobby, like sleeping hubs, a kitchenette, and VIP spaces, so potentially a place for players to log in and out of, and also some maintenance places as well, all with missions like they say. So it does sound like maintenance missions will come for 323, but we will see, because I figured they would need the resource network for that. Below that, you will find the main body of the distribution center, where the warehouse is, storing all types of cargo, and then branching off of that are 2 side roads, offering a mixture of different room types, like a cargo shop, which is part delivery space, part canteen for the staff, and the storage rooms, or cargo rooms, make up the bulk of these areas, which is where all the cargo is located, in the racks, and you'll need a tractor beam to access them. And it's likely that they are stacked in this way to avoid the physics issues of taking a box from the bottom pile and then it all tumbling down. This kind of removes that problem. There are also worker areas, a security area, side doors, and a side road to another maintenance area with underground ventilation access, and either side has separate cargo areas, shipping depot, and security door to the outside. So they are certainly massive, and in the future, they have said they will expand to the underground even more, which is likely where the factories will be, offering even more locations. Now, mission-wise, they are offering missions for all players, and have created a variety of options for whether you are an aggressive player or a passive player. Now, for example, if you are an aggressive but lawful player, you will have missions to maybe defend these distribution centers from NPC attacks, and I would think eventually player attacks as well, like we see with Security Post Korea, and this would involve joining with the defenders to repel the attackers. For non-aggressive and lawful players, there will be many box hauling missions, delivering and picking up cargo and taking it elsewhere. Hopefully those maintenance missions as well, going and fixing items and things around the place. They even have an option to do internal delivery missions, so using a hover trolley to distribute cargo from one section in a distribution center to another section in the same DC, as they are that big, taking cargo from the cargo room up to the lobby perhaps. Now, this might sound boring to many, and that's fine. Cloud Imperium want to create missions for everybody, and I can't imagine this is going to pay great, but for me as a zero to hero player and a role player, I do love the idea of just doing a day in the life of series of videos where I work in a distribution center, doing those small internal delivery missions, taking a break in the canteen, coming back and doing some more, all while watching chaos unfold if it gets attacked, or meeting people coming and going and picking up and dropping off their goods and offering a hand, you know. If you don't want to load it, I'll load it, pay me some UEC and I'll load it for you. I love that idea. Now, for the aggressive, illegal player, you might do an all-out assault on the center, although you will be shot at by turrets, and there is an NPC crew inside and on the outside. This might involve needing to assassinate someone inside or rob some cargo. Again, this will be very much based on the type of DC that you're going to, and will offer various challenges for each location. And then finally, for non-aggressive, unlawful players, a mission could be theft, so stealthing through and stealing some goods. And looking at the interiors, there is a lot of locations to hide and stealth around. Now, if you were just to go straight to a distribution center without a mission, the response from each DC will vary depending on which one. Some of them will be welcoming, others will not, and the same goes for non-mission combat, so if you go in all guns blazing, you will then have to deal with the security inside and outside. Now, one thing that was spoken about a lot, that I personally think was a little over-exaggerated just to kind of show the range of gameplay that's on offer, is how often you will be just doing a delivery mission and then each time ending up with someone just shooting up the place. Now, this is not going to be the case and will heavily depend on a lot of variables. For example, each distribution center will see more or less FPS action on its role and location, or who owns it, the level of security available and how effective that security is, I suppose, on day one of its release versus in the future when more stability systems and NPC capabilities are implemented. Basically, depending on the DC you go to, there will be a lot of variation to whether or not you will see FPS and how that will be handled. And in 3.23, when these locations first come in, chances are they will be a PvP hotspot, as they are the new shiny, and everyone wants to see them. But over time, again, depending on which one you go to, that will settle down. Turrets and NPC defenses will become a lot more challenging for players and will push back accordingly, encouraging players to plan better. Plus, as more and more of these locations and other locations come in, it'll spread the players out more, settle it down a little bit more as well. So do not worry, I think it was just sold as a variety of different missions. It's not just going to be a constant, I just want to drop this box off, and each time I do, I get blown up. Now, for future releases, they say not only will we see more of these locations, but they will also offer raids, which we heard about at CitizenCon, as well as much more of an underground to these locations as well, with big cargo freight elevators going all the way down to the depths, tunnels and other access points as well. There is a lot to come from these, and personally I am really excited to see these locations come in with all of the potential variety of missions available of all types, and as much as it was certainly sold as a bit of an FPS fest, as I say, there will be a lot of variables as to whether you see combat or not, and I will certainly finally get to live out my cargo deck worker fantasy. Also, some observations during this episode was that there is a sign at some of the locations for a refinery, so not all distribution centers, but it looks like one or multiple will have refineries inside, which is a very nice choice alongside the L1 stations. Plus, it's going to be great to see these locations hooked into the reputation system and offer interesting progression to open up better or more lucrative jobs as well as rewards. Distribution centers are up there with my most anticipated 3.23 features, so I was really excited to watch this episode, but that was Inside Star Citizen. Let us move on. So this week's Star Citizen Live was with members of the team responsible for the player interaction experience, EVA, and that kind of stuff, answering many of our questions regarding all things in this area. Starting with EVA, the first question was, will we keep up our momentum if we were to jump out of a moving ship? Now, although the question wasn't really answered as such, it does sound like a definitive no at this time, as the top speed, or the top possible speed when EVAing is around 36 meters a second. However, your speed while using a thruster pack is around 6 meters a second. And I think it was said about 10 meters a second when you're using a tractor beam. So I do suspect that what will happen is you jump out and then you immediately slow down to about 36 meters a second and just keep slowing down from there until you reach 6 meters a second if you are thrusting your jets. Which is a shame, but it's more of just how it is right now and more of a limitation of the tech, I suppose, or maybe more of a game design choice. But who knows, in the future they could do something to speed that up if we feel like we want it as well. Now, next question is, since EVA will require fuel, how will we refuel, and does equipment weight affect fuel consumption? And do bear in mind that for 3.23, we won't have finite fuel. That will come in a later patch. Now, in regards to refueling in Star Citizen lore, the fuel used in jets is compressed nitrogen, which means that your EVA jet system will actually refuel automatically while you're in atmosphere. There will also be a refueling pen, which is kind of like an ejection device that will refuel your jets as well, but also you will have the choice to use your oxygen from your own personal oxygen supply, which you will need to weigh up the pros and cons of doing so. So, for example, you might need a little bit more jet thrust just to make it back to your ship, and if you choose to sacrifice some of your oxygen, you might get there, but if you miss or use too much, then you may end up suffering in the meantime. Now, in terms of weight, at the moment, it is not really a big factor, but it is something that they want to explore further in the future. And armor in the future as well will also have more specific roles, so some may have better or worse EVA capabilities, and in some cases, some armors won't even have EVA jets at all. So it is definitely moving towards that more thinking and planning and making the right choice. Next question is, can you hold a box while EVAing? And yes, you can, but they want to polish this up a little bit more and make it look better. It will work in 3.23, but it will look a little better over time. Next question from this is, will we have the option to stand upright while in EVA? Now again, not in 3.23, as the focus is on the laying down stance and providing a polished experience with that. In the future, if we are interested in it, then they may provide that if we let them know. And I think it would be a great idea personally, allowing that for the future, being able to toggle from laying down to sort of standing upright. I think it will just make the whole experience a lot more interesting and realistic as well. Now the next question is, previously you spoke about magnetic boots. Are they still expected? Again, not in 3.23, and they're not actively looking at it right now, but they will consider it in the future. Now, mag boots were actually on the roadmap some time ago, and has since been taken off, of course. So I do certainly expect that one day we will have mag boots in the game, but it's more a case of priorities and resources and what is needed first. Next question, will you allow EVA speeds above 6 meters a second? And they say these are the speeds that they feel are good right now, but if we want faster speeds, as mentioned, they will look at potentially increasing it. And I personally think there is a place for that, maybe with racing EVA jets so you can race around. But obviously, if you're in a bit of a dire situation and you're trying to get away from maybe an explosion or a fire or attackers or creatures and aliens, if you're traveling only at 6 meters a second, it is going to feel pretty slow. So I think we definitely need the option, but maybe we do so at our own risk of hitting things. I don't know, that's just my opinion anyway. Next question, if I attach myself to a ship using the push-pull mechanics, can the ship shake me off? Now they say, although this is still a work in progress, they haven't tested it yet, but he thinks that the likeliest thing that will happen is the external G-force will then just push you off the ship. Now I suppose the point being is, they don't know until they try it, but like with many systems built in Star Citizen, things allow for very systemic and sometimes realistic outcomes simply based on how the systems are built. So, of course, we will all have to test this, and remember that the push and pull system is not coming with 3.23, that will be coming in a later patch. Next question, how disruptive are the transitions from EVA to gravity, as it does appear to take control of the player's movements? Now they say it doesn't feel disruptive at all. The transition is so quick and seamless that you don't really notice it, and there is no sense of loss of control. Can we use a knife or do takedowns in EVA is the next question. And again, for 3.23, you will be able to do a simple slash with a knife, but in the future they will be looking into further ways that we will be able to do this, but it will require a bit of problem solving. Now I do think eventually it will be necessary, fighting or capturing bounties in EVA, so I get that there is a lot of edge cases with this, with how the animation will play based on the angle you are at with the opposition, but I personally think it will be quite necessary. Next question is it planned to produce specialities or emergency equipment for EVA travel, like reserved fuel tanks, specific armor, or short duration boost capsules, for example? Now, fuel injections, as mentioned, are planned, but yes, what we are wearing will impact this as well. As we've mentioned, one suit might be more maneuverable, whereas another might be less maneuverable, but carry more fuel. Backpacks as well will have more fuel available, and all this kind of stuff is planned, and currently for 3.23, all armor is still EVA capable, but as we mentioned, that will change in the future. Will weapon recoil affect EVA? And they say right now in lore, so Star Citizen lore, the thruster packs generally counter the weapon recoil, but it is something that they will like to do in the future, and I personally think it would be quite a decent trade-off for choosing ballistics versus energy weapons, so ballistics giving you a bit of a pushback, whereas energy weapons would be a much more stable firing choice. Can we still zoom while holding F in EVA? And yes, you can. Will we be able to EVA inside our own ships? And again, not for 3.23, but once the resource network comes in, we will be able to turn off gravity in our ships, and not just our ships, but environments like space stations and EVA around them. And this was one way of repelling boarders, so you might have a group of players or NPCs trying to board your ship. If you could turn off the gravity to make it a bit more challenging for them, but eventually there will be a whole range of options to move around in EVA from the jets and the different types of jets and armors, tractor beams, the push-pull system, being able to push off of a surface as well into a certain direction, and even things around the ship to grab hold of, like handles, to push or pull yourself along. And then the final question for EVA specifically was wingsuits, parachutes, something for atmospheric ejection. Now, they definitely want to do something, and it has been discussed, but no examples of what direction they're going to take has been provided. Now, I personally think, and somewhat expect, a range of options here. They may start with one thing being like a jump pod or something that will just cushion your fall as you come in, but I would love to see eventually things like traditional parachutes, wingsuits, and everything in between. I think the options here are quite vast because you have real-world options as well as sci-fi options. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing what they decide and what choices we'll have in the future. Now, the next set of questions are all regarding the player interaction system. First question being, will we be able to turn off the F indicator in some way? So a great question that has been on my mind since I saw Inside Star Citizen. And they say for 323, you will be able to disable the button prompt, so remove the big F icon, but the name of the interaction will still remain. So you'll look at an item and it'll say carry, inspect, store, or whatever you've got it set up for. Now in the future, they will consider options for turning it off entirely, especially for things like machinima. And personally speaking, I think it is great to have the indicator to help new players get to grips with this system, but once you have played Star Citizen enough, I don't think we will really need the indicator, as we will just know what we're doing and what we want to do with it. And I really want to be able to turn it off completely, but maybe only show up if I held F with the radial menu, as that would really give us a way of properly appreciating the visuals without UI. They go to so much effort to make the UI diegetic. To have this interaction system just ruin all that with button prompts everywhere, I feel is a mistake. So very happy to hear that the F does not need to be displayed all the time, and hopefully they'll provide a way to remove it entirely. So I'm really glad that that was answered. Next question is, if I'm in loot goblin mode, can I still loot a corpse in its entirety, or do I have to click on every single item? Now, there will be a take-all option at some point, but also some items are grouped, so you could just take all the med pens or all the magazines, as they are specifically grouped as well. So there's going to be a couple of options there just to make it a lot easier. Maybe there will be a time delay, personally speaking, if you're wanting to just move all, so that it's not a simple case of looking at a corpse and just taking everything, giving a bit of a slowdown to it so that it's a bit more realistic. Next question is, how will the interactions with NPCs work using the new interaction system? And they say that the personal inner thought when interacting with NPCs and those conversation prompts have not changed, so that is still how we're going to be talking with NPCs. It is just how we interact with items that has changed. Next question, how does the new PI system work and interact with ship consoles? So for 323, you still use the interact mode, but instead of the single prompt option in a list format, you will be able to bring up the wheel by holding F and then have the options that way on what you want to interact with. After 323, they want to use a free look option as the standard option, so as you look around, you will see the prompts just pop up, and also the MFD screens will show the cursor as you look at it and move around, rather than having to enter a different mode. Now, they still want to put a lot more polish on this system, and in the future, players' hands will physically reach out and touch and press and toggle buttons. That's not for 323, but again, going back to the whole UI system of having F on every button, they did say that they've not put it for everything because it can get very cluttered, which is exactly what we've been saying, but I think for new players, it is going to be useful to have that F key so you can see what buttons do what when you're starting out, but when you become more accustomed to certain ships or certain manufacturers, you will know what button does what. Plus, the buttons are labeled, so we don't need the F key hovering over things in the ship because most buttons have the label with what they're going to do. Next question is, will the new Pi have an adjustable HUD color to change in the settings, so basically more accessibility options? Now again, not in 3.23, but they definitely want to provide a full range of accessibility options in the future, and as we actually see more updates to helmet styles come along, these could have different color visors depending on the manufacturer of the helmet, but that is more of a separate thing to accessibility options. I guess it is more a case of getting the final versions of the HUDs done so that they can then address these accessibility options from there without them changing all the time. It was also said that they have just built out a new UI team in Montreal, so that should bring a lot more resources to all things UI, which is great news, and hopefully speed up the rate at which these options can come in, as they are obviously very important. I know a lot of people in the community who struggle with these types of situations like color blindness, so it is definitely important to CIG, and hopefully they can get them done as soon as possible. So that was Star Citizen Live this week. Some good questions answered there that I had as well myself. Very happy with what we've heard, although there are certain things like speed changes that I would like to see in the future. I think it is safe to say that for 3.23, the EVA change is huge in the sense of how it impacts everything we do in space, but still pretty limited in terms of where they want to go with it, and it will change even more in the future, but for 3.23 it is just going to be a big blessing to get rid of the current EVA system and give us this new system to make life so much better. But with that said, let us move on. So also this week, Squadron 42's monthly report was released to the comlink. I have already covered this update in a dedicated video, which I will link below. And for those wondering, my Persistent Universe monthly report video is coming this week as soon as possible. There was a new lore post, which is a whitelist guide on the Anvil Valkyrie. This was actually taken from a jump point, number 7.5 I think it was, so subscribers, you may have already read this. And finally, since my last Star Citizen Sunday, there has been 4 new 3.22.1 patches on the ePTU, and it is now open to all backers. Now, this patch is heavily focused on bug fixing and quality of life, as well as many client crashes, stability crashes, server crashes, which we have seen become quite common since 3.20. It also includes a lot of Master Mode changes, Siege of Orison and Xeno threat changes, distortion weapon changes, and a lot more. So as much as it's not a feature-rich patch, like that of a main quarterly release, these little interim patches are Cloud Imperium basically trying to tackle as many long-standing issues in all areas, and each one does bring some great quality of life improvements for sure. No idea when this patch itself will release, but now that it is open to all backers, it is getting much closer. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.